The claiming ceremony was supposed to be her triumph. Instead, Mara stood alone on the ritual platform while Prince Kalen turned his back, choosing another woman in front of the entire court. The crowd's laughter cut deeper than any blade she'd ever faced in training. She was the soldier without a wolf, powerless, unwanted, a joke in a kingdom where strength meant everything. But when the silent king rose from his throne, every voice died. What he did next would shatter 1,000 years of tradition and ignite a war that would reshape their world forever. Stay until the end to see how a discarded warrior becomes the most feared queen in the realm. Drop a like and tell us what city you're watching from. The training yard smelled like blood and wet earth, a combination Mara Vane had grown to associate with home more than any bed she'd ever slept in. Her knuckles were split open again, wrapped in cloth that had once been white but now showed rust-colored stains from weeks of reuse. She couldn't afford new wrappings. Hell, she could barely afford the thin gruel they served in the lower barracks. She swung her blade at the practice dummy, feeling the impact shudder up her arms. Again. Again. The wood was splintering where she'd hit it 1,000 times before, right at throat level. She didn't have a wolf to give her supernatural strength, so she built it the old way, repetition until her muscles remembered, until her body moved faster than thought. Still at it, Vane? The voice made her jaw tighten. She didn't turn around. Some of us don't have gifts from the gods, Torin. We have to work. Torin Blackmane laughed, the sound easy and cruel. He was one of Prince Kalen's favorites, a warrior whose wolf had manifested when he was barely 13. Now at 26, he stood 6'4" with the kind of natural power that made men step aside when he walked through a room. Work. He said the word like it was funny. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a waste of everyone's time. Mara finally turned to face him. Sweat ran down her temples, and her dark hair had come loose from its tie. She was lean where other warriors were bulky, scarred where nobles were pristine. Her eyes were an unusual pale gray, wolfish, people said, which was the only wolfish thing about her. Then stop standing there and go waste your time somewhere else. 3 other warriors stood behind Torin, all of them wearing the prince's colors. They were smirking, waiting for the show. This was entertainment for them, watching the wolfless girl pretend she mattered. I would, Torin said, but the prince sent me to fetch you. He wants to see you. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Damn it. She hated that it still did that. Now? No, next week. Yes, now, you idiot. Clean yourself up first. You look like you rolled in the mud with the pigs. The other warriors laughed. Mara set her jaw and grabbed the rag from her belt, wiping her face and hands. She didn't hurry, didn't let them see how much this mattered. When she was done, she walked past them without a word. Good dog, one of them muttered behind her. She kept walking. The castle was divided into sections that might as well have been different countries. The lower barracks where Mara slept were stone and functional, cold in winter, stifling in summer, always smelling faintly of mildew and unwashed bodies. The middle levels were better, where the merchant families and minor nobles lived in something approaching comfort. And then there was the upper castle, where the royal family and their court resided in a different world entirely. Mara had walked this path enough times to know every step, every turn. She knew which guards would sneer at her, and which would pretend she didn't exist. She knew that the servants in the upper halls would pull their skirts aside when she passed, as if her lack of wolf blessing might be contagious. She'd learned to walk with her chin up and her shoulders back, as if she belonged there. It was a lie, but it was a lie she'd committed to completely. Prince Kalen's chambers were in the east wing, with windows that overlooked the city below. The door was already open when she arrived, and she could hear voices inside. His and a woman's laughter that made her stomach knot. She knocked anyway. Come in, Mara. His voice was warm, familiar. She stepped through the doorway and immediately wished she hadn't. The prince was sprawled in his chair near the fireplace, looking effortlessly handsome in a way that still made her pulse quicken after 2 years. Golden hair, strong jawline, blue eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. He wore his shirt half open, relaxed and confident in his own space. Lady Isolde Thorne sat across from him, beautiful in the way that noble women were. Perfectly dressed, perfectly positioned, perfectly aware of her own value. She looked at Mara the way someone might look at a servant who'd tracked mud on an expensive carpet. Mara. Kalen smiled at her, and damn him, it was a real smile. I'm glad you came. I wanted to talk to you about something important. Isolde's expression suggested she found this amusing. Should I come back later? Mara asked, hating how uncertain she sounded. No. Isolde was just leaving. Weren't you, Isolde? The noblewoman rose gracefully, smoothing her silk dress. Of course. Though we should finish our earlier conversation soon, Kaelin. There are arrangements to be made. She walked past Mara without acknowledging her, trailing expensive perfume and subtle condescension. When the door closed, Kaelin gestured to the chair Isolde had vacated. Sit, please. Mara sat, painfully aware of how out of place she looked in this room. Her training clothes were stained with sweat and dirt. Her hands were calloused and rough. She smelled like the practice yard. You wanted to see me? Kaelin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The claiming ceremony is in 3 weeks. Her chest tightened. The claiming ceremony. The ritual where unmated wolves declared their chosen partners, where bonds were formed that would last a lifetime. It was the most important social event in the kingdom's calendar. I know. I want you there, Mara, with me. The words should have filled her with joy. Instead, they filled her with a sick kind of dread mixed with desperate hope. She'd been here before, dancing on the edge of promises that never quite materialized. As what? The question came out harder than she intended. He looked wounded. As my chosen, obviously. What else would I mean? You've never said it directly before. I'm saying it now. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. His touch was warm, gentle. I know it hasn't been easy for you here. I know people talk, that they judge you for not having a wolf. But I don't care about that. I never have. Mara wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. She'd loved him since she first arrived at the castle 3 years ago, sent by her village to serve in the military after her father died. Kaelin had been the first person to treat her like she mattered, to see past the stigma of her wolflessness. The court will fight this, she said quietly. Your mother. My mother doesn't choose my mate. I do. His hand tightened on hers. I want it to be you, Mara. I've always wanted it to be you. She searched his face, looking for the lie, for the catch. She saw only sincerity in those blue eyes. Then why wait until now to tell me? He had the grace to look embarrassed. I needed to be sure, to handle the politics correctly. You know how these things work. Timing matters. But I'm ready now. I want to claim you in front of the entire kingdom. I want everyone to know you're mine. The words wrapped around her like armor and chains at the same time. She wanted this. God, she wanted this so much. But something in her gut twisted with warning. What about Isolde? She seemed very comfortable here. Isolde is a political ally, nothing more. Her father controls the northern territories. We need their support, but that has nothing to do with you and me. He made it sound so simple. Maybe it was simple. Maybe she was overthinking this, letting her insecurities poison something good. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay. His smile could have lit the entire castle. He pulled her closer, kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. She let herself sink into it, let herself believe that maybe, finally, she'd found where she belonged. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of Mara's life. Word spread quickly about the prince's intentions. Nothing stayed secret in the castle for long. The reaction was immediate and vicious. The first morning after Kaelin's announcement, Mara found her training clothes shredded in her trunk, slashed to ribbons by someone with sharp claws. No wolf, said the note tucked inside. No right to stand beside a prince. She wore her spare set and said nothing. In the dining hall, conversation stopped when she entered. The other warriors wouldn't sit near her. Someone spilled their drink accidentally on her food 3 times in 1 week. The noble ladies were worse. They had refined cruelty into an art form. I heard Prince Kaelin has taken pity on the wolfless girl, Lady Vera said loudly enough for half the courtyard to hear. How charitable of him. Like adopting a stray dog. Her companions laughed behind their fans. Mara had trained herself not to react to insults. But these cut deeper because they touched the truth she tried not to think about. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. Kaelin, to his credit, stayed close. He sat with her at meals, walked with her through the gardens, made public displays of affection that should have silenced the gossip, but somehow only made it worse. He's trying to make a point. Her only real friend, a grizzled weapons master named Kyle, told her one evening, trying to prove he doesn't care what they think. But the court doesn't work that way. They'll punish you for his defiance. What am I supposed to do? Mara asked, too tired to hide her frustration. Tell him to leave me alone? Kale studied her with eyes that had seen too many battles. I'm saying watch yourself, and watch him. Make sure he's strong enough to handle what's coming. The warning sat heavy in her chest. She started noticing things she'd ignored before. The way Kalen's smile faltered when his mother, Queen Sorella, entered a room. The way he changed the subject when Mara asked about specific plans for after the ceremony. The way he never quite contradicted the nobles who questioned his choice, just smiled and stayed silent. You're overthinking, he told her one night when she voiced her concerns. They were in his chambers again, her head on his chest, his fingers in her hair. 3 more days, Mara. 3 days and this will all be settled. You'll be mine, officially and permanently. They'll have to accept it. She wanted to believe him. She was so tired of doubting, of being afraid. Promise me, she whispered. Promise me you won't change your mind. Skating. He pulled back to look at her, and there was something in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or guilt. I promise. I've never lied to you, Mara. I won't start now. She fell asleep in his arms that night, trying to ignore the voice in her head that screamed, this was all going to fall apart. The claiming ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, a massive chamber with vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows that threw colored light across the stone floor. The entire court attended, nobility, warriors, merchants, anyone with enough status to receive an invitation. Mara stood in the preparation chamber with the other unmated women, feeling like an imposter among them. They were all daughters of noble houses, raised for this moment. They wore silk gowns in their family colors, jewels that caught the light, hairstyled by servants who'd spent hours on each elaborate arrangement. Mara wore a simple dress in deep blue that Kalen had sent to her chambers. It was beautiful, far nicer than anything she'd ever owned, but it couldn't hide what she was. Her hands were still calloused, her posture was still a soldier's, and she still, after 3 years in this castle, had no wolf. Nervous? She turned to find Isolde standing beside her, stunning in a gown of silver and white. Up close, the noblewoman was even more beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, perfect skin, dark hair that fell in glossy waves down her back. Should I be? Mara asked. Isolde smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I suppose that depends on whether the prince keeps his word. He's been known to be impulsive, romantic. Sometimes those impulses don't survive contact with reality. Mara's stomach nodded. He gave me his word. Of course he did. I'm sure he meant it at the time. Isolde adjusted her necklace, a delicate thing that probably cost more than Mara would earn in a lifetime. But you should know, his mother has been quite vocal about her disapproval, and the council has made it clear they won't support a wolfless queen. There are expectations, you see, bloodlines to consider, the future of the kingdom. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not cruel enough to let you walk out there without knowing what you're facing. Isolde's expression was almost pitying. The prince cares for you, I'm sure, but caring isn't always enough when you're born to rule. Before Mara could respond, a bell chimed, the signal to enter the hall. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She joined the line of women filing through the doors, trying to breathe, trying to focus. The grand hall was packed. Hundreds of faces turned to watch as they entered. Mara had been in battles, had faced down warriors twice her size with nothing but a sword and determination. But this was different. This was a different kind of combat, and she had no weapons for it. The unmated males stood on the opposite side of the hall. Prince Kalen was at the front, impossibly handsome in formal clothing, his golden hair catching the light. He was looking right at her. She tried to read his expression, tried to find reassurance there. What she saw instead made her blood run cold. He looked uncertain, pale. His jaw was tight, and he kept glancing toward the raised platform where the royal family sat. Queen Sorella watched the proceedings with a face carved from ice. Beside her sat King Aldrich, silent and still, as he always was. The king was a mystery to the entire court, a powerful warrior who rarely spoke, who'd ruled for 20 years with an iron fist hidden beneath a veneer of calm. He watched everything and revealed nothing. Right now, his dark eyes were fixed on Mara. The high priest stepped forward to begin the ceremony. His voice echoed through the hall, reciting the ancient words about bonds and choices, about wolves recognizing their true mates, about the sacred nature of the claiming. Mara barely heard any of it. She was watching Kalen, watching the way his hands trembled slightly, watching the way he kept glancing at his mother. No, no, please, no. The first claiming happened. A young noble stepping forward to declare his choice, his chosen accepting with tears of joy. The crowd cheered. The ritual continued. 3 more claimings. 4. 5. Then it was Kalen's turn. The hall went completely silent. Everyone knew what was supposed to happen. Everyone was waiting to see if the prince would really choose the wolfless soldier over every eligible noblewoman in the kingdom. Kalen stepped forward. His eyes found Mara's across the hall. She saw the apology there before he even opened his mouth. I claim... His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, started again. I claim Lady Isolde Thorne as my chosen mate. The world didn't end. That was the strange thing. Mara stood there, still breathing, still standing, while the floor dropped out from under her life. Isolde moved forward gracefully, accepting the claim with a practiced smile. The crowd erupted in applause, relieved, approving applause that told Mara everything she needed to know about what they'd thought of Kalen's supposed plans. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The other unmated women shifted away from her, creating space, isolating her. Someone laughed. Then someone else. Within seconds, the laughter spread through the hall like wildfire. The wolfless girl had actually believed a prince would choose her. How pathetic. How delusional. Mara's vision tunneled. She was aware of the heat in her face, the way her hands had gone numb. Humiliation crashed over her in waves, each one worse than the last. She needed to leave, needed to get out of this hall before she shattered completely. She turned toward the door and found King Aldrich standing from his throne. The laughter died instantly. The king never participated in claiming ceremonies. He'd been mated to Queen Sorella for decades. There was no reason for him to move. He walked down the steps from the platform, each footfall echoing in the sudden silence. His presence was overwhelming, power that pressed against the air itself, making everyone in the hall instinctively straighten, pay attention. He walked past his son and Isolde without a glance, past the line of nobles, past the high priest. He walked directly to Mara. She stared up at him, unable to process what was happening. King Aldrich was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples. His face was hard angles and sharp edges, handsome in a brutal way that had nothing to do with Kalen's soft prettiness. His eyes were black, unreadable, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. I claim Mara Vane, he said, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade, as my chosen mate. The silence that followed was absolute. Shocked. Horrified. The king had a mate. The king was married. This broke every law, every tradition, every rule that governed their society. Queen Sorella stood slowly, her face white with fury. Aldrich, our bond has been dead for 15 years, the king said without looking at her. You know it. I know it. The entire court knows it. The claiming ceremony honors true bonds, not political arrangements. I'm honoring that now. He turned back to Mara, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes besides that impenetrable darkness. A question. A challenge. The choice is yours, he said quietly, just for her. You can refuse. Walk out of here and return to your barracks. No one will stop you. Or you can accept and face everything that comes with being chosen by a king who's breaking 1,000 years of tradition. Mara's mind reeled. This was insane. Impossible. She didn't even know this man. He'd never spoken to her before in her entire life. But as she stood there, she became aware of the eyes on her. The court watching with a mixture of horror and glee, waiting to see the wolfless girl humiliated twice in one night. Kalen, pale and shocked, his arm around Isolde. The nobles who'd made her life hell for daring to hope she might be worthy of something more. And she realized something that cut through her shock like clean steel. She had nothing left to lose. I accept, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. The king's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. He extended his hand, she took it, and the entire kingdom erupted into chaos. The king's hand was warm and calloused, a warrior's hand. Mara held it as the grand hall descended into pandemonium around them, voices rising in shock and outrage, the careful order of the ceremony shattering like glass. "This is an outrage!" Queen Sorella's voice cut through the chaos. She stood at the edge of the platform, her face twisted with a fury Mara had never seen directed so openly. "You cannot simply dissolve a royal bond because it suits your whim, Aldrich. There are laws I helped write." The king's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the hall anyway. He still hadn't looked away from Mara. "Laws that state a bond built on political arrangement rather than true connection can be challenged. You've taken lovers for a decade, Sorella. Don't pretend we have something sacred to protect." The queen's face went white, then red. Around the hall, gasps rippled through the crowd. This kind of truth wasn't supposed to be spoken aloud, especially not in front of the entire court. "How dare you? I dare because I'm done pretending." Now he did turn to face his wife, his expression carved from stone. "You wanted power, not a mate. You have your power. Release the bond, or I'll have the council do it for you." "The council answers to me as much as you," Sorella hissed. "Then let's ask them." Aldrich gestured to the row of elderly nobles seated near the platform, the men and women who advise the crown on matters of law and tradition. "Lord Chancellor, what does the law say about bonds broken by mutual infidelity and absence of wolf recognition?" An old man with a beard down to his chest stood slowly, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The law states that such bonds can be dissolved by declaration before witnesses, Your Majesty. But the scandal? I don't care about scandal." The king's hand tightened on Mara's. "I care about truth. Sorella, will you release the bond willingly, or shall we do this the hard way?" The queen stared at him with something close to hatred. For a long moment, Mara thought she would refuse, would fight this in front of everyone. Then her expression smoothed into something cold and controlled. "Fine. I release you from our bond, Aldrich. May you enjoy your consolation prize." The insult was clear. Mara felt it land, felt the weight of the queen's contempt settling over her like a shroud. Around the hall, she could see the nobles' faces, some shocked, some disgusted, many calculating what this meant for their own political positions. She found Kaelin in the crowd. He looked stricken, his arms still around Isolde, but his eyes fixed on Mara with something that might have been regret, or might have been relief that someone else was now the center of attention. "The bond is dissolved," the high priest said, his voice shaking. "By declaration and witness. King Aldrich is free to claim another." "Then I claim Mara Vane." The king turned back to her, and this time there was something almost gentle in his hard features. "If she'll have me." This was insane. This was political suicide. This was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever offered her. Mara looked at the faces surrounding them. The disgust, the shock, the barely concealed glee of those who love drama more than sense. She saw Lady Vera whispering furiously to her companions, saw Torrin Blackmane watching with his mouth open, saw the other soldiers she'd trained beside, the ones who'd mocked her, belittled her, made every day a battle just to prove she had a right to exist. "Yes," she said clearly, "I'll have you." The king's smile was brief, almost hidden, but she saw it. Then he pulled her forward, placed one hand on the back of her neck, and kissed her in front of the entire kingdom. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't romantic, it was acclaiming in the most primal sense, his mouth hard on hers, his hand fisted in her hair, his body angled to shield her from the crowd, while simultaneously displaying her as his. The kiss said mine in a language older than words. When he pulled back, Mara's knees were weak and her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Now it's done," Aldrich said. He kept his arm around her waist, keeping her close. "Anyone who has objections can bring them to me directly. I suggest you think carefully before doing so." The threat was unmistakable. The hall remained silent, but Mara could feel the hostility pressing against her skin like heat from a fire. The king led her out through the side exit, his hand never leaving her back. The crowd parted for them like water around a ship's prow, and then they were in the corridor, the heavy door closing behind them and muffling the explosion of voices that followed their exit. Mara's legs finally gave out. She slumped against the wall, breathing hard, her mind spinning. What did you just do? The words came out harsh, almost angry. What did we just do? Aldrich leaned against the opposite wall, watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. I made a choice. You made a choice. That's all. That's all? She laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. You just destroyed your marriage, humiliated your son, and claimed a woman without a wolf in front of the entire kingdom. That's not all. That's... She couldn't find words big enough for what it was. Necessary, he said calmly. Necessary for what? For you to survive. He straightened, taking a step toward her. Do you think I haven't been watching, Mara? Do you think I didn't see what was happening? My son is weak. He would have promised you the world and then abandoned you the moment his mother applied pressure. You would have been humiliated, cast out, possibly killed by someone looking to curry favor with the court. This way, you have protection. She stared at him. You did this to protect me? I did this because you're stronger than anyone in that hall, including my son, and I'm tired of watching strength go to waste. His expression was hard, but there was something burning behind it. You've survived 3 years in a court that wanted you gone. You've trained every day knowing you'd never have the natural advantages of those around you. You've faced mockery and cruelty and kept your chin up. That's worth more than 1,000 noble bloodlines. The words hit her harder than any insult ever had. She'd spent so long being told she was worthless that hearing the opposite from the most powerful man in the kingdom felt like a physical blow. I don't understand you, she whispered. You will. He held out his hand again. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. The next few days are going to be difficult. That, Mara thought, as she took his hand, might be the greatest understatement she'd ever heard. The king's personal chambers were in the highest tower of the castle, far from the court's prying eyes. Mara had never been in this part of the building before. The halls were quieter here, lined with tapestries that probably cost more than her entire village had been worth. Guards stood at attention every 20 feet, their eyes carefully neutral as the king led her past. His rooms were surprisingly simple. Large, yes, and well-appointed, but not the ostentatious display of wealth she'd expected. Dark wood furniture, weapons mounted on the walls, books stacked on every available surface. It looked like a place where someone actually lived, not a showpiece for visitors. You'll stay here, Aldrich said, closing the door behind them. At least until we can make more permanent arrangements. Stay here, Mara turned to face him. In your chambers. You're my claimed mate now. Where else would you stay? I don't know, maybe the nice cell where you keep your other political catastrophes? She was getting hysterical again and couldn't stop it. The reality of what had just happened was crashing down on her in waves. This is insane. You know this is insane, right? Sit down before you fall down. She sat, more because her legs gave her no choice than because he told her to. Aldrich poured something amber from a crystal decanter and handed it to her. She drank without thinking and immediately choked. Whatever it was burned like liquid fire all the way down. That's 50-year-old whiskey, he said with the faintest hint of amusement. You're supposed to sip it. Well, excuse me for not knowing the proper etiquette for drinking with the king who just claimed me in front of everyone to save me from his son's cowardice. She took another drink, more carefully this time. The burn was already warming her from the inside out, cutting through the shock. Aldrich sat across from her, studying her face. You're angry. Of course I'm angry. I'm angry at Kaelin for being a lying coward. I'm angry at myself for believing him. I'm angry at you for... She gestured helplessly. For this. Whatever this is. For giving you a way out? For making me your project. The words burst out before she could stop them. I don't need to be saved. I don't need someone to swoop in and rescue me like I'm some helpless... If you were helpless, I wouldn't have claimed you. His voice was sharp enough to cut through her spiral. I don't rescue people, Mara. I recognize assets when I see them. You're an asset that's been consistently undervalued. I'm correcting that. An asset. The word tasted bitter. Is that what I am to you? Something shifted in his expression. Right now, you're a woman who's had her world turned upside down and needs time to process. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what you actually are. But tonight, you're safe. That's all that matters. Safe. The word felt foreign. She'd been so many things in her life, unwanted, mocked, desperate, determined, but safe had never been one of them. Why do you care? She asked quietly. You don't know me. We've never even spoken before tonight. Why would you risk everything for someone you don't know?" Aldrich was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, rougher, with an edge of something she couldn't identify. "Because I've been watching you for 2 years, and I've seen more courage in you than in my entire court combined. Because you remind me what strength actually looks like. And because—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Because what?" "Because my wolf recognized you the first time I saw you in the training yard, and I've spent 2 years trying to ignore it while I watched my son play with your heart like it was a toy he could pick up and put down whenever he got bored." The air left Mara's lungs. "Your wolf recognized me? Don't ask me to explain it. I can't. You don't have a wolf. By every law of nature, this shouldn't be possible. But my wolf knows its mate when it sees one, and it's been howling for you since the day you walked into this castle." She set down the glass before she dropped it. Her hands were shaking. "That's impossible." "I know. I don't have a wolf. I can't bond with someone who does." "I know. Then why?" "I don't know." For the first time, real emotion cracked through his controlled exterior. "I don't know why. I don't know how. I just know that it's true, and I'm done fighting it. I'm done watching you suffer while pretending I don't care." Mara stood, needing to move, needing to think. She paced to the window and looked out over the city below, the lights flickering in the darkness like fallen stars. Behind her, she heard Aldrich stand as well, heard his footsteps as he crossed to stand beside her. "I'm not asking you to love me," he said quietly. "I'm not even asking you to want this bond, but I am asking you to accept my protection and let me give you the position you've earned. You fought for a place in this world. Let me make sure you keep it." She turned to look at him. In the dim light from the window, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. He looked dangerous, powerful, nothing like Kaylin's soft beauty, but there was something in his eyes that made her chest ache, a loneliness that matched her own. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow the court will try to tear you apart. They'll question your worth, your bloodline, your right to stand beside a king. They'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and use it against you." His expression hardened. "And you'll face them all and prove they're wrong." "How?" "By being exactly who you've always been, by not backing down, by showing them the same steel you've shown every day for 3 years. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't need to be someone else, Mara. You just need to be you, but with the full weight of the crown behind you instead of against you." His touch was gentle, completely at odds with his harsh features. Mara found herself leaning into it without meaning to. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp, but don't let it control you." His hand moved to cup her jaw. "You've already survived the worst they could throw at you. Everything else is just noise." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this could work, that she could somehow navigate the political nightmare she'd just walked into and come out the other side intact. "What about us?" The question slipped out. "What are we actually doing here?" "Learning," he said, "getting to know each other. Figuring out if this impossible bond my wolf insists on can become something real." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "I won't force anything on you, Mara. This chamber has multiple rooms. You can take the bedroom, I'll take the study. We'll share space, show a united front to the court, and take the rest as it comes." It was more consideration than she'd expected from a king who'd just claimed her in front of everyone. "Okay, okay?" He stepped back, breaking the contact, and the loss of warmth made her shiver. "There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. I had them sent up earlier. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts early." "How early?" His smile was sharp. "You'll be meeting with the council at dawn to discuss your new position. They're going to test you. Be ready." Perfect. Just perfect. Mara didn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed in the king's chambers, staring at the ceiling, and tried to process everything that had happened. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kaylin's face as he chose Isolde, heard the laughter of the court, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes judging her and finding her lacking. Then she remembered Aldrich's hand in hers, his voice cutting through the chaos, the way he'd kissed her like she was something worth claiming. The sun rose slowly, pale light filtering through the heavy curtains. Mara gave up on sleep and went to the wardrobe. The clothes inside were beautiful, fine fabrics and deep colors, nothing ostentatious but clearly expensive. She chose a dark green dress with practical lines, something she could move in if necessary. Old habits died hard. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Aldrich already awake, dressed in his formal council attire and reading through a stack of documents at his desk. He looked up as she entered. "You didn't sleep." "How did you know?" "I didn't sleep either. I could hear you moving around." He set down his papers. "Nervous about the council?" "Terrified." "Good. They'd eat you alive if you walked in confident." He stood, crossing to where she stood. "Let me see you." She felt suddenly self-conscious as his eyes traveled over her. The dress fit well, highlighting her lean frame rather than trying to hide it. "You look like a queen," he said finally. "I look like a soldier in a nice dress." "Same thing, in your case." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No, let's go anyway." The council chamber was a circular room with a massive oak table at its center. 12 seats surrounded the table, one for the king, one for the queen, and 10 for the council members who advised them. Mara had never been in this room before. Soldiers didn't get invited to council meetings. All 10 council members were already seated when they arrived, their faces ranging from openly hostile to carefully neutral. Queen Sorella sat in her usual place, her expression frozen. Aldrich led Mara to the seat beside his, the queen's seat, Sorella's seat. "This is my claimed mate, Mara Vane," Aldrich said without preamble. "She will be taking her place on this council, as is her right." "Her right?" Lord Chancellor Brennan looked like he'd bitten into something sour. "With all respect, Your Majesty, the girl has no bloodline, no wolf, no training in governance. She has survived 3 years in a court that wanted her dead. That's more qualification than most of you had when you took your seats." "This is unprecedented," Lady Cordelia, the oldest council member, said sharply. "A wolfless woman cannot—" "Cannot what?" Aldrich's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Cannot serve, cannot advise, cannot think?" He leaned forward. "I've watched this council for 20 years. Half of you earned your positions through birth, not merit. You want to question Mara's qualifications? Let's start by questioning yours." The silence that followed was thick with tension. "The claiming was legal," Aldrich continued. "The bond with Sorella was dissolved by mutual agreement in front of witnesses. Everything was done according to law and tradition. If you have actual legal objections, state them now. Otherwise, accept reality and move on." Mara sat perfectly still, trying to look calm while her heart tried to beat out of her chest. She could feel their eyes on her, measuring, judging. "Perhaps," Lord Various said slowly, "we should hear from the lady herself. After all, she'll need to prove she can contribute to these discussions if she's to keep this seat." It was a trap. They wanted her to speak so they could tear apart whatever she said. Aldrich started to respond, but Mara put a hand on his arm. "I can speak for myself." She stood, facing this council directly. "You're right that I have no noble bloodline. You're right that I have no wolf. You're right that I haven't been trained in politics or governance." She paused. "But I have been trained to survive. I've learned to fight when the odds are against me. I've learned to see threats before they strike, and I've learned that strength isn't just about power. It's about knowing when to bend and when to stand firm." "Pretty words," Lady Cordelia said, "but words don't run a kingdom." "Neither does endless posturing," Mara shot back. "I've watched this court for 3 years. I've seen you all jockey for position, form alliances, stab each other in the back when it suits you. You want to know if I can contribute? I can tell you exactly which members of this council are loyal to the crown and which are just waiting for an opportunity to increase their own power." The room went very still. "That's a serious accusation," Lord Brennan said coldly. "It's an observation." Mara kept her voice level. "Lord Various has been meeting with the Southern Territories every new moon for the past 6 months. Lady Cordelia has been quietly buying up land near the eastern border. Lord Brennan's daughter just married into a family that has historical claims to the throne." She looked at each of them in turn. "I may not have been in this room before, but I've been paying attention. If you want someone who sees the game being played, I'm right here." Aldrich's hand found hers under the table, squeezing briefly. Pride, she realized. He was proud of her. The council members exchanged glances. They hadn't expected her to come out swinging. "The girl has eyes," Sorella said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was ice. "How charming. But observation isn't the same as understanding. You can watch a wolf hunt without understanding how to lead the pack." "Then teach me," Mara said, meeting the former queen's eyes directly. "You've led this council for 20 years. If I'm so unqualified, prove it by showing me what I don't know. Unless you'd prefer to just sit there and throw insults because it's easier than admitting a soldier might see things a noble missed. Sorella's eyes narrowed dangerously. You have no idea what you've walked into, child. I know exactly what I've walked into. A room full of people who want me to fail so they can say they were right about me. Mara leaned forward. What I don't know yet is whether any of you are smart enough to use me instead of fighting me. I'm an asset you didn't expect. I can go places and hear things that none of you can because everyone underestimates me. But if you'd rather waste that advantage because you're offended by my bloodline, that's your choice. The silence stretched out. Then Lord Various started to laugh. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle of politics. She's got teeth, he said, still grinning. I'll give her that. Teeth don't make a queen, Lady Cordelia insisted. No, Aldrich said quietly. But they help. This meeting is over. You've heard her. You've tested her. She passed. Anyone who wants to challenge her place here can do so formally, with witnesses and legal grounds. Otherwise, I suggest you get used to seeing her in this chair. He stood, and Mara stood with him. They walked out together, leaving the council in shocked silence behind them. In the hallway, Mara's legs finally started shaking. You did well, Aldrich said. I nearly threw up twice. They didn't notice. He glanced at her. Where did you learn about their meetings and alliances? I listen. People forget soldiers exist when they're having private conversations in hallways. She leaned against the wall. Did I just make everything worse? Probably, but you also made them respect you, which is more important. He moved to stand in front of her. You're going to be tested like this every day for months. They'll push, you'll push back. Eventually, they'll either accept you or try something more direct. More direct like what? His expression darkened. Like assassination. The word hung in the air between them. You're joking. I'm not. You're a threat to their power structure. Some of them will try to remove you. He cupped her face in both hands. Which is why you're going to start training with my personal guard. Real training, not the basics you learned in the lower barracks. If someone comes for you, I want you able to gut them before they get close. Mara's laugh came out shaky. This is my life now, council meetings and assassination attempts. Welcome to the crown. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. Still think I saved you? I think you threw me into a different kind of war. At least this one, you can win. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, a gentle gesture that somehow felt more intimate than anything else he'd done. Come on, we need to get you fitted for armor. As they walked through the castle halls, Mara caught sight of their reflection in a polished shield hanging on the wall. The king and his claimed mate, walking side by side. She looked small next to him, still out of place in her fine dress, but her chin was up and her shoulders were back, and she looked like she belonged there. Maybe that would be enough. The whispers started before they'd made it back to the tower. Servants pressed themselves against walls as they passed, their eyes following Mara with a mixture of fear and fascination. Word had clearly spread about the council meeting. They think I'm dangerous now, she said quietly. You are dangerous. That's the point. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Prince Kalen. He stood in the middle of the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept either. His usual polish was missing, his hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. Father, he said, I need to speak with you. Make it quick. Aldrich's voice was cold in a way Mara had never heard him use with his son before. Kalen's eyes flicked to Mara, then away. In private. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my mate. The title made Kalen flinch. Please, Aldrich sighed. Mara, wait in my chambers. I'll be there shortly. She didn't want to leave, didn't want to give Kalen the satisfaction of a private conversation, but she also didn't want to force the issue. She nodded and continued down the hall, feeling Kalen's eyes on her back the entire way. The king's chambers felt different in the daylight, less intimidating, more lived in. She paced to the window and looked out, trying not to imagine what Kalen was saying to his father. The door opened 20 minutes later. Aldrich entered alone, his expression thunderous. What did he want? Mara asked. To apologize, to explain, to ask me to reconsider. Aldrich poured himself a drink and downed it in one swallow. He claims he loved you, that he was pressured by his mother, that he made a mistake. Something twisted in Mara's chest. What did you say? I told him that loving someone and being strong enough to stand by them are two different things, that he had his chance and he wasted it, and that if he comes near you again, I'll have him removed from the line of succession. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they just felt hollow. He's your son. He's a coward who hurt you. Being my son doesn't give him immunity from consequences. Aldrich set down his glass and turned to face her fully. Do you still love him? The question caught her off guard. Did she? She'd thought she loved Kaelin, had built her entire world around the possibility of a future with him. But standing here now, claimed by his father, she realized what she'd felt for the prince wasn't love. It was hope, desperation, the need to be wanted by someone who could give her a place to belong. No, she said, and realized it was true. I don't think I ever really did. I loved the idea of him. The idea that someone like him could want someone like me. He's an idiot, Aldrich said flatly, and you're worth 10 of him. She crossed to where he stood. He watched her approach with careful eyes, not reaching for her, letting her come to him on her own terms. Your wolf really recognized me, she asked softly. From the moment I saw you. But that's impossible. I know. His hand came up to rest against her waist. I don't understand it either. But impossible doesn't mean untrue. Mara placed her palm against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her hand. This man had upended his entire life for her, had claimed her in front of the kingdom, divorced his wife, challenged his counsel, threatened his own son. All for a woman he barely knew. What if this doesn't work? She whispered. What if I can't be what you need? Then we'll figure it out together. His other hand came up to tangle in her hair. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Mara. I'm just asking you to try. She rose up on her toes and kissed him, not because he expected it, not because she had to, but because she wanted to, because this terrifying, impossible man had seen her when everyone else looked through her, because he'd given her a weapon when the world tried to make her a victim. The kiss was different from the claiming kiss in the hall, slower, deeper, a question and an answer wrapped together. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Aldrich rested his forehead against hers. We're going to survive this, he said. Promise? I promise. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Aldrich growled something that definitely wasn't appropriate for a king and went to answer it. A guard stood in the hallway, his face pale. Your Majesty, there's been an incident. Mara's stomach dropped. What kind of incident? The guard's eyes flicked to her, then back to the king. Someone tried to break into the ladies' old chambers in the lower barracks. They set a fire. The entire section is damaged. Aldrich's expression went deadly calm, the kind of calm that came right before violence. Casualties? No, sire. The section was empty. Everyone knew she'd moved to your chambers, so it was a message. Mara stepped forward. Someone showing me what they think of my new position. Someone who's about to learn what happens when you threaten what's mine, Aldrich said, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite human. His wolf was close to the surface, she realized. Dangerously close. He turned to the guard, locked down the castle. No one enters or leaves without my explicit permission. I want every person who was near the lower barracks in the last 4 hours questioned, and I want the guard doubled around my chambers. Yes, sire. The guard left. Aldrich closed the door and turned back to Mara. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he said. I know. They're going to come for you in ways you can't predict. I know. And you're still willing to do this? Mara thought about the girl she'd been yesterday morning, desperate for approval, clinging to a prince who would never choose her, believing she had to beg for scraps of worth from people who would never see her value. That girl was gone. The woman standing here now had been claimed by a king, had faced down a council, and had survived the first shot fired in a war she hadn't asked for but wouldn't run from. I'm still willing, she said. Aldrich pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like steel bands. Then we fight. Together. Outside the tower windows, smoke rose from the lower barracks. A warning and a declaration of war. Mara watched it climb toward the sky and felt something fierce and cold settle in her chest. They wanted to burn her out? Fine. She'd burn them first. The fire in the lower barracks burned for 3 hours before they could contain it. Mara watched from the tower window as smoke turned the afternoon sky gray, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind her, Aldrich was giving orders to his guard captain, low, clipped commands that carried the weight of barely restrained violence. Whoever did this knew the section would be empty, she said, without turning around. They wanted to send a message, not commit murder. Not yet. Aldrich's voice was rough. Next time they might not be so careful. She turned to face him. The king looked different now, harder, older. The control he usually wore like armor had cracked enough to show the wolf underneath. His eyes had gone almost black, and she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept flexing like he wanted to rip something apart. How long before they come directly for me, me? Days, maybe hours. He crossed to her, moving with a predator's grace. I want you to start carrying a blade, everywhere, even in the castle. That's against protocol for anyone not in the guard. You're the king's mate. You make your own protocol now. He pulled a knife from his belt, sleek, deadly, the handle worn smooth from use. Take it, learn it, use it if you have to. The weight of the blade in her hand was familiar, comforting. She'd trained with weapons her whole life, but always practiced weapons. Always under supervision. This was different. This was permission to defend herself by any means necessary. Thank you, she said quietly. A knock interrupted whatever he was about to say. The guard captain entered, his face grim. We questioned everyone near the lower barracks, Your Majesty. Most have alibis, but 3 servants are unaccounted for during the time of the fire, and one of them, he hesitated. Spit it out, Marcus. One of them is employed by Lady Isolde Thorne. The silence that followed was dangerous. Mara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Isolde, the woman Kaelin had chosen. The woman who now wore the title that should have been Mara's in another life. Bring the servant to the dungeon, Aldrich said. I'll question them myself. My lord, if I may, perhaps it would be better to let the interrogators... I said, I'll handle it. The king's voice dropped to a growl that made the guard captain take a step back. Anyone connected to this attack answers to me directly. Understood? Yes, sire. After Marcus left, Mara touched Aldrich's arm. Let me come with you. No. Why not? If this is about me, I should be there. He turned to look at her fully, and the wolf in his eyes made her breath catch. Because when I interrogate people who threaten what's mine, I'm not civilized about it, and I don't want you to see that part of me yet. I'm not fragile. I know. But I am, when it comes to you. He cupped her face in his hands. Give me this. Let me handle the brutal parts while you stay safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on facing this head on, but she also saw the truth in his eyes. He needed to do this, needed to protect her in the most primal way possible. Denying him that would hurt him more than any physical wound. Fine, but I want to know everything you learn. You will, I promise. He kissed her forehead, then her mouth, quick and hard. Stay in these chambers. Don't answer the door for anyone but me or Marcus, and keep that knife where you can reach it. Then, he was gone, and she was alone with the smoke-stained sky and her racing thoughts. Mara lasted exactly 20 minutes before the walls started closing in. She'd spent 3 years living in cramped barracks, sharing space with a dozen other soldiers, never having a moment of true privacy. The king's chambers were luxurious, spacious, everything she'd never had, and they felt like a prison. She needed to move, to train, to do something other than stand here waiting for someone else to handle her problems. The training yard would be too public, too many eyes, but there was a smaller practice room on the 3rd level, one the elite guards used. She'd snuck in there a few times before, when the castle was quiet and no one was watching. She changed into training clothes, pants and a tunic that allowed freedom of movement, strapped the knife to her thigh, pulled her hair back tight. If someone wanted to try something while Aldrich was gone, let them. She was done being a target. The corridors were quieter than usual, servants moving quickly with their heads down. News of the fire had spread, and with it, the understanding that the castle was on edge. When the king's wolf was close to the surface, everyone with sense made themselves scarce. Mara made it to the practice room without incident. It was empty, as she'd hoped, racks of weapons along the walls, practice dummies, padded mats on the floor. She selected a staff, feeling the weight of it in her hands, and began the form she'd drilled into muscle memory over years of training. Strike, block, spin, thrust. Her body remembered, even if her mind was elsewhere. Sweat began to bead on her forehead, her breathing evening out into the rhythm of combat. This she understood. This made sense in a way politics and council meetings never would. You favor your left side. She spun, staff raised, heart hammering. Isolde Thorne stood in the doorway, elegant even in her concern, her dark hair perfect, her dress immaculate. The last person Mara wanted to see. What do you want? Mara kept the staff between them. To talk. Isolde stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. Without an audience, for once. We have nothing to talk about. Don't we? Isolde's smile was sharp. You're living in the king's chambers. I'm engaged to the prince. We're bound together now whether we like it or not. I didn't choose this. Neither did I. Isolde moved closer, and Mara noticed for the first time that the noblewoman looked tired, strained around the edges. You think I wanted to be Kaelin's consolation prize? You think I enjoyed watching him pine for you while being forced to accept his claim? The words hit harder than expected. He chose you. Because his mother gave him no choice. Because the council would have destroyed him if he'd chosen a wolfless nobody. Isolde's voice was bitter. We're both pawns, Mara, just in different games. Your servant set that fire. I know. Isolde's expression didn't change. And I had nothing to do with it. Arya acted on her own, trying to curry favor with me by attacking you. I've already dismissed her from service and turned her over to the king's guard. Mara studied the other woman's face, looking for the lie. She found only weary honesty. Why are you here? Because someone needs to warn you that the fire was just the beginning. Isolde crossed her arms. The noble houses are terrified. You're an unknown variable who just claimed a position they thought was secure. Lady Cordelia has already started gathering support to challenge the king's decision. Lord Various is meeting with border lords who have never been loyal to the crown. And the queen... She stopped. What about the queen? Sorella hasn't made a move yet. That's what scares me. Isolde's eyes were serious. She's the most dangerous player in this game, and she's been quiet since the claiming ceremony. That's never a good sign. Why warn me? What do you get out of this? Isolde's laugh was hollow. Survival. If you fall, the crown weakens. If the crown weakens, people like my father start thinking about coups and civil wars. I'm trying to prevent bloodshed, even if it means helping the woman who... She stopped again. Who what? Who Kaelin actually loved. The words came out flat. He still does, you know. He's miserable. Barely eats, barely sleeps. Keeps asking me if I think his father will forgive him. Something twisted in Mara's chest. But it wasn't sympathy. Not anymore. That's his problem. It's all of our problem if he does something stupid. Isolde stepped closer. Look, I'm not asking us to be friends. I'm asking you to be smart. Watch your back. Trust no one, not even the servants. And for the love of everything, start training with the royal guard. You're good with that staff, but good isn't enough when someone comes for you with real intent to kill. Before Mara could respond, the door slammed open. Aldrich stood in the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. His eyes locked on Isolde, and the wolf in them was very close to the surface. Get out, he said, his voice barely human. Isolde didn't hesitate. She walked past him without a word, her head high, her dignity intact even in retreat. When she was gone, Aldrich turned to Mara. What did she want? To warn me. About the nobles gathering against us. She's trying to get close to you, make you trust her. Maybe, or maybe she's actually trying to help. Mara set down the staff. Did you get anything from the servant? His expression darkened. Arya acted alone. Isolde didn't order it. The girl was trying to impress her new mistress. Thought attacking you would earn her favor. He moved into the room, closing the distance between them. I've increased security around these chambers. No one gets close without Marcus personally approving them. So we're prisoners in our own castle. We're careful in a castle full of people who want you dead. He reached out and pulled her against him, his arms tight around her. She felt him shaking slightly, the adrenaline and rage still working through his system. I've killed people for less than what was done today. The only reason Arya is still breathing is because I need to know if anyone else was involved. Mara pulled back enough to look at his face. There was blood on his knuckles, not his own. What did you do to her? Nothing permanent, yet. His eyes met hers. Does it bother you that I'm willing to hurt people to protect you? She thought about it honestly. A week ago, she might have been horrified, but a week ago, she'd been a different person. The woman she was now understood that survival required hard choices, that mercy could be a luxury they couldn't afford. No, she said. It doesn't bother me. Something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or approval. He kissed her, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. It was possession and promise, claim and challenge. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I need to tell you something, he said roughly. Something I should have mentioned before. What? The bond between us? It's not normal. You know that. But there's more. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. My wolf recognizing you should be impossible, but it's also never been wrong, and there's a reason for that. Mara's heart started to pound. What reason? You're not wolfless, Mara. You never were. The words didn't make sense. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the explanation that would make this make sense. What are you talking about? I've never shifted, never felt anything, because someone bound it. His hands gripped her shoulders. Someone put a powerful binding on you when you were young, locked your wolf so deep inside you that it couldn't surface. I've seen it before, in children who were too powerful, too dangerous. Families would bind them to keep them controllable. The room spun. That's not possible. My family was nobody. Farmers. We had no power. Your mother's family, maybe. But your father... He stopped, his jaw tight. I had Kyle look into your bloodline after I claimed you. Your father wasn't who you thought he was. Stop. Her voice came out strangled. Just stop and say it clearly. Your father was Marcus Venaborn, eldest son of the Venaborn Alpha line. They were one of the most powerful packs in the kingdom before they were wiped out in a purge 23 years ago. Aldrich's eyes were intense on hers. You're not nobody, Mara. You're the last surviving heir of a bloodline that was destroyed because it threatened the throne. The world tilted. Mara pulled away from him, stumbling back until she hit the wall. No, that's not... My father died when I was 5. He was just a farmer. He never mentioned... He was hiding, protecting you. The Venaborn line was exterminated because your grandfather tried to challenge the old king's rule. Your father was the only one who escaped, and he bound your wolf to keep you safe. If anyone had known what you were, they would have killed you. Memories flashed through her mind. Her father's careful isolation, the way he'd never let her near other wolves, the way he'd died so suddenly when she was small. She'd always thought it was illness. Now she wondered if it had been murder, someone finding him, finishing what they'd started. Who ordered the purge? Her voice was hollow. Aldrich's silence was answer enough. Your father, she said. The old king. Your father killed my entire family. Yes. She wanted to be sick, wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, hurt him, make him feel even a fraction of what she was feeling. And you knew this. When you claimed me, you knew. I suspected. I didn't confirm it until today. He took a step toward her, stopped when she flinched. Mara, listen to me. I'm not my father. I didn't order that purge. I was barely 16 when it happened, and I fought against it. The Venaborn line didn't deserve what happened to them. But you benefited from it. You sit on a throne built on my family's bones. I know. His voice was raw. I know. And I've lived with that guilt for 20 years. When I saw you in the training yard, when my wolf recognized you, I thought maybe I could finally make it right, give you back what was taken. By claiming me? She laughed, and it came out broken. By making me yours? That's not making it right. That's just another kind of control. No, by breaking the binding. He moved closer, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. I can break the binding on your wolf, Mara. I'm strong enough to do it. And once it's broken, you'll have access to power that makes every noble in this castle look weak. You'll be unstoppable. She stared at him. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because breaking a binding is dangerous. It can kill you if it's not done right. And I needed to be sure you trusted me enough to let me try. Trust. The word was laughable. She'd trusted Kaelin and he'd destroyed her. She'd been starting to trust Aldrich, and now this. Get out, she said. Mara, I said get out. Her voice cracked. I need to think. I need to just go, please. He looked like she'd struck him, but he nodded. I'll be in my study. When you're ready to talk, I'll be there. Then he was gone, and she was alone with the truth that rewrote her entire life. She didn't know how long she sat there on the practice room floor, her mind spinning through memories, re-examining everything through this new lens. Her father's paranoia, his insistence that she never show fear, never back down, never let anyone see weakness. He'd been preparing her, training her to survive in a world that wanted her dead. And she'd thought he was just being strict. The door opened again. Mara's hand went to the knife at her thigh, but it was only Kyle. The old weapons master looked at her with eyes that had seen too much and understood more. He told you, Kale said. It wasn't a question. You knew. I suspected your fighting style. It's Vayna-born technique. Your father must have taught you, even if he didn't tell you why. Kyle lowered himself to the floor beside her with a grunt. I knew your grandfather. Fought beside him before the politics turned bloody. He was a good man who made bad choices. What choices? He saw corruption in the crown and decided to fight it. Gathered allies, made plans for a coup. The old king found out and struck first. Kale's voice was heavy. It was brutal. Entire families wiped out in a single night. Your father got out with you because he wasn't in the compound when it happened. He was visiting your mother's village. Mara's hands were shaking. Why didn't he ever tell me? Because you were a child. Because knowing would have put you in more danger. And because, Kyle hesitated, because he bound your wolf so tightly that he thought it would never wake. He thought you could live a normal life, free from the bloodline's curse. But Aldrich's wolf recognized me anyway. The bond doesn't care about bindings. It sees what's true underneath. Kyle studied her face. The question is, what are you going to do now that you know? That was the question, wasn't it? She could refuse to let Aldrich break the binding, could live the rest of her life as she had been. Wolfless, powerless, dependent on the king's protection. Safe maybe, but never truly free. Or she could take the risk. Let him break the binding and see what she really was underneath the locks her father had put in place. If the binding is broken, she said slowly, and I survive, what happens then? You become dangerous. Powerful enough that the nobles will have real reason to fear you. Kale's smile was grim. You might even be powerful enough to take the throne yourself if you wanted it. The thought sent a chill through her. I don't want the throne. Maybe not now, but power has a way of changing what you want. He pushed himself to his feet. Talk to the king. Hear what he has to say. Then decide. After he left, Mara sat in silence for another hour, turning the decision over in her mind. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to keep herself locked away where she was safe. But safety had never been her goal. Survival had. And survival required power. She stood, brushed off her clothes, and headed for the king's study. Shut. Aldrich was staring at a map when she entered, his shoulders tense, a glass of something amber in his hand. He looked up when she came in, and the hope in his eyes was almost painful. I want to know everything, Mara said. Every detail about the binding, about what breaking it will do, about the risks. No more secrets. He set down his glass. Sit. This is going to take a while. For the next 2 hours, he explained. The Vayne-born line had been known for producing wolves of exceptional strength, alphas who could command entire packs, whose power grew with age instead of plateauing. Her grandfather had been able to force submission from wolves miles away just by willing it. Her father had reportedly been even stronger before he went into hiding. The binding your father used was military grade, Aldrich said, designed to completely suppress the wolf, bury it so deep that even you couldn't feel it. But bindings like that don't just lock away power, they lock away part of your soul. That's why you've always felt incomplete. She had. She'd never been able to articulate it, but there had always been something missing, some hollow space inside her that no amount of training or determination could fill. Breaking it is dangerous because all that power will come flooding back at once, he continued. Your body hasn't grown with your wolf, hasn't learned to handle that kind of strength. The shock could kill you, or it could drive you mad temporarily while your mind adjusts. Temporarily? Days, maybe a week. You'd be volatile, dangerous. You'd need to be restrained for your own safety and everyone else's. And you're willing to risk that? His eyes met hers, dark and serious. I'm willing to risk anything to give you back what was stolen from you, but only if you want it. This is your choice, Mara, not mine." She stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere in the castle, nobles were plotting against her. The queen was waiting for her moment to strike. The court watched her every move, waiting for her to fail. And she was so tired of being the victim, of being the girl without a wolf, the soldier without power, the woman who survived on scraps and determination alone. "Do it," she said. "Mara—" "I said do it." She turned to face him. "I'm tired of being weak, tired of needing protection. If there's a chance I can be strong enough to stand on my own, I'm taking it." Aldrich stood slowly. "Once I start, there's no going back. Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes." He crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. "This is going to hurt, more than anything you've ever felt. I've survived worse." His smile was sad and proud at the same time. "You really have, haven't you?" He kissed her, gentle this time, almost reverent. "We'll do it at dawn. I'll need to prepare, gather the right herbs to help manage the pain. And I'll need Marcus to help restrain you if things go wrong." "Will they go wrong?" "I don't know. I've never broken a binding this old or this strong." His honesty was terrifying and somehow comforting at the same time. "But I swear on everything I am, I'll do everything I can to keep you safe through it." She nodded, not trusting her voice. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face, heard his voice teaching her to fight, to survive. Had he known this day would come? Had he hoped she'd never need to access the power he'd locked away? Or had he always known she'd eventually have to become what she was born to be? When dawn broke gray and cold, she rose and dressed in simple clothes, nothing that would restrict movement if her body started to change in unexpected ways. Aldrich was already awake, preparing the ritual circle in the center of his chambers. Chalk marks on the floor, candles at precise intervals, bowls of herbs that smelled sharp and medicinal. Marcus arrived with chains, silver, blessed, strong enough to hold a raging alpha. The sight of them made her stomach turn, but she understood the necessity. "Ready?" Aldrich asked. No, she wasn't ready. She was terrified, but she was also done being afraid. "Yes." She knelt in the center of the circle. Marcus attached the chains to her wrists and ankles, securing them to iron rings embedded in the floor. The metal was cold against her skin. Aldrich knelt in front of her, his hands gentle as they touched her temples. "Look at me, Mara. Stay focused on my voice. No matter what happens, no matter what you feel, hold on to my voice." "Okay." He began to chant, words in the old language, words that made the air shimmer and press against her skin. Power gathered in the room, thick and suffocating. Mara's breath came faster. Then his power drove into her like a spear. Pain exploded through her entire body. It felt like every bone was breaking, every muscle tearing, every nerve catching fire. She screamed, couldn't stop screaming, her body convulsing against the chains. "Stay with me!" Aldrich's voice cut through the agony. "Mara, stay with me!" She couldn't. The pain was too much. She was drowning in it, her vision going white, her mind fragmenting. Then something moved inside her, something huge and furious that had been caged for 20 years. Her wolf slammed against the inside of her skin, demanding freedom, demanding blood. Mara felt her bones start to reshape, felt fur trying to burst through her flesh. The binding fought back, clamping down harder, trying to force the wolf back into its prison. The battle inside her was killing her. She could feel herself dying, torn apart by forces she couldn't control. "Let go!" Aldrich's hands gripped her face, forcing her to focus on him. "Stop fighting it! Let your wolf out!" "I can't. It's too—" "You can! You're stronger than the binding. Let go and let it break." She didn't know how. The binding had been part of her for so long that releasing it felt like cutting out her own heart. But Aldrich's eyes were black with power, his wolf lending her strength, and she realized she wasn't alone in this. She stopped fighting, stopped trying to control the chaos inside her, and the binding shattered. Power flooded through her like a dam breaking, vast and wild and terrifying. Her wolf surged up, taking control, reshaping her body in an instant. The chains snapped like thread. She felt herself change, bones breaking and reforming, muscles rippling with new strength, senses exploding into clarity so sharp it hurt. When the transformation completed, she wasn't human anymore. She was massive, bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen, with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes that glowed silver in the dim light. Power radiated from her in waves that made the candles gutter and the air crackle. Marcus had his sword drawn, his face pale. Aldrich stood perfectly still, watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Mara's wolf wanted to kill, wanted to tear apart everything in sight, to make the world pay for the years of captivity. She could taste blood on her tongue, could hear hearts beating like drums, could feel the violence singing in her veins. But underneath the rage, she found something else. Control. Will. The same iron determination that had kept her alive through 3 years of mockery and betrayal. She looked at Aldrich, really looked at him, and saw his wolf looking back, black and ancient and powerful, equal to equal, mate to mate. She shifted back to human form, the transformation smooth and natural despite never having done it before. She knelt naked in the broken circle, chains scattered around her, her body humming with power. "Well," she said, her voice rough, "I guess we know it worked. Aldrich's laugh was relief and joy and something close to awe. He pulled her against him, wrapping her in his arms, and a blanket Marcus silently provided. "You're magnificent," he whispered against her hair. "Absolutely magnificent." She felt magnificent, strong and whole, and finally complete. Then the door slammed open and a guard stumbled in, his face white with panic. "Your Majesty, the Queen, she's called the Council into emergency session. She's demanding your arrest for unlawful use of forbidden magic, and she's brought the Royal Guard to enforce it." Aldrich's arms tightened around Mara. "How many?" 50 men, fully armed. They're surrounding the tower." Mara pulled back to look at Aldrich's face. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with fury. "They waited until you were vulnerable," he said quietly, "until you'd just gone through the breaking and couldn't fight back effectively. Sorella's been planning this." "Can they actually arrest you?" "If the council votes for it, yes. And Sorella's had years to buy their loyalty." His jaw clenched. "She's staging a coup, using the binding breaking as an excuse to remove me and put Kaelin on the throne." "Then we fight," Mara said. "You just broke a 20-year binding. You're not ready for combat." She stood, letting the blanket fall, and felt her wolf rise inside her, eager, powerful, ready. "I've never been more ready in my life. They want to arrest you for giving me back my power? Let's show them exactly what that power looks like." Aldrich stared at her, and slowly his smile turned savage. "Marcus, get the lady some armor. We're going to make a statement." As Marcus rushed to obey, Mara felt her wolf settle inside her like a second heartbeat, strong, fierce, and finally free. The nobles wanted war? Fine. They'd get a war, but it wouldn't be the one they expected. It would be the one they deserved. The armor Marcus brought was simple, but effective. Black leather reinforced with steel plates, designed for movement rather than ceremony. Mara dressed quickly, her new wolf senses making every texture sharp, every sound crystal clear. She could hear the guards gathering outside the tower, smell their nervous sweat, feel the vibration of their footsteps through the stone floor. 50 men, she said, buckling the last strap. "You've faced worse odds." Aldrich was strapping on his own armor, his movements efficient and practiced. "Not with someone I care about in the line of fire. I can handle myself now." "I know. That's what terrifies me." He crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. "Stay close to me. Your wolf is strong, but you haven't learned control yet. If you shift in the middle of combat, you might not be able to shift back." She nodded, though part of her wanted to test those limits immediately. Her wolf was hungry for violence, eager to prove itself after 20 years of imprisonment. She could feel it pacing inside her, barely contained. Marcus cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, the Council is assembling in the Grand Hall. Lady Sorella has declared this a matter of kingdom security. If we don't respond soon..." "We'll respond. On our terms." Aldrich picked up his sword, the blade singing as he drew it from its sheath. "How many of the guard are loyal to me?" "Maybe 20. The rest answer to the Council, and the Council answers to whoever pays them best. So we're outnumbered 2-1. 3-1 if you count the nobles who'll side with Sorella." Marcus looked grim. "This is a trap, sire. She wants you to fight. Wants you to look like a tyrant using force against lawful authority. Then we won't give her what she wants." Aldrich's eyes met Mara's. We'll give her something she didn't prepare for. They descended the tower stairs in silence, their footsteps echoing off stone. Mara's senses were overwhelmed. She could smell old blood in the walls, hear conversations happening 3 floors away, feel the temperature shift as they moved through different parts of the castle. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. The guards were waiting at the base of the tower, 50 men in the Queen's colors with weapons drawn. At their head stood Commander Thrace, a grizzled veteran whose loyalty had always been questionable. "King Aldrich," Thrace said, his voice formal and cold, "you are hereby ordered to appear before the Emergency Council to answer charges of illegal magic use and endangerment of the realm. Surrender your weapons and submit to custody." "On whose authority?" Aldrich's voice was calm, almost bored. "The Council's." "By unanimous vote." "Impossible. I sit on the Council. There's no unanimous vote without me." Thrace's jaw tightened. "The Council voted to suspend your seat pending investigation of these charges." "Convenient." Aldrich shifted his weight, a small movement that somehow made every guard tense. "And if I refuse?" "Then we're authorized to use force." Mara felt her wolf surge forward, ready to fight. She pushed it down with effort, keeping her breathing steady. "Not yet. Not until it was necessary." Aldrich seemed to consider this. Then he smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Mara had ever seen on his face. "Tell Sorella I'll meet with the Council, but not as a prisoner." He gestured to Mara. "My mate and I will walk to the Grand Hall under our own power, with our own weapons. Any man who tries to stop us will answer to my wolf. Clear?" Thrace looked uncertain for the first time. Behind him, guards exchanged nervous glances. The king's reputation as a warrior was well-earned, and his wolf was legendary. Even 50 men might not be enough if he decided to fight. "Those aren't the terms." "Those are my terms. Take them to your mistress and see what she says." For a long moment no one moved. Then Thrace nodded sharply and signaled for his men to part. They created a corridor leading toward the Grand Hall, weapons still drawn but no longer actively threatening. Aldrich took Mara's hand and they walked through the gap, heads high, showing no fear. The guards watched them pass with a mixture of respect and terror. Mara could feel their eyes on her, could hear whispers starting. "Did you see her? She's different. What happened to her?" Let them wonder. Let them fear. The Grand Hall doors stood open, revealing the assembled council and half the noble families in the kingdom. They'd gathered quickly, which meant Sorella had planned this well in advance, probably had messengers ready to send the moment the binding broke. The council sat at their table, faces grave and determined. Sorella stood at the head, looking triumphant in a way that made Mara want to rip her throat out. Beside her stood Kaelin, pale and miserable, and Isolde, her expression carefully neutral. The nobles filled the gallery, hundreds of them, all dressed in their formal attire. This wasn't just a council meeting. It was a spectacle, a show trial designed to break Aldrich's authority and cement Sorella's power. "King Aldrich," Lord Chancellor Brennan intoned, "you stand accused of practicing forbidden magic, specifically the breaking of a lawful binding placed for the protection of the kingdom. How do you answer?" Aldrich stepped forward, still holding Mara's hand. "I answer that I broke no law. The binding in question was placed 23 years ago by Marcus Vanneborn on his own daughter. It was his right as her father. Breaking it was my right as her mate." Gasps rippled through the hall. The Vaneborn name still carried weight, even after 2 decades. "The Vaneborn line was exterminated for treason," Sorella said, her voice sharp. "Any surviving member should have been executed, not claimed by the king. The Vaneborn line was exterminated based on fabricated evidence of a coup that never materialized," Aldrich shot back. "My father slaughtered innocents because he was paranoid and power-hungry. I won't continue his crimes." "You admit that this woman is descended from traitors?" "I admit that she's descended from wolves who dared to question corruption. That doesn't make them traitors. It makes them courageous." Mara squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his defense of her family. Around the hall, she saw nobles whispering, calculating. This was new information to many of them. Lord Various stood. "The law is clear. Bloodlines declared traitor cannot hold positions of power. If Lady Mara is indeed Vaneborn, she cannot be the king's mate." "That law was written by my father to justify genocide," Aldrich said. "I'm revoking it as of now." "You can't simply revoke laws because they're inconvenient." "I can when they're unjust. That's what being king means." His voice dropped to something dangerous. Unless you'd like to challenge my authority directly, Lord Various? Various sat down quickly. Sorella stepped forward. This isn't just about bloodlines. You used forbidden magic to break a binding that has stood for decades. Such magic requires blood sacrifice, dark rituals. It requires power and will, Aldrich interrupted. Nothing more. I spilled no blood but my own energy. There was no dark ritual, no sacrifice. I simply broke a lock that never should have been placed. You endanger the entire kingdom by unleashing an unknown power. I freed a woman from a prison she didn't deserve. He pulled Mara forward, presenting her to the council. Look at her. Does she look dangerous to you? Every eye in the hall fixed on Mara. She stood tall, meeting their stares without flinching. Let them look. Let them judge. She was done caring what they thought. Then Lady Cordelia spoke, her ancient voice cutting through the murmurs. Let the girl speak for herself. If she's truly Vaena-born, if she truly has a wolf now, let her prove it. Let her show us what the king's recklessness has unleashed. It was another trap. They wanted her to shift, wanted to see her lose control, wanted evidence that she was dangerous and wild. If she refused, they'd call her weak. If she shifted and couldn't control it, they'd call her a threat. Mara felt Aldrich tense beside her, ready to refuse on her behalf. But she stepped forward before he could speak. You want proof? Her voice carried through the hall. Fine. But know this, I didn't ask for this power. I didn't ask to be born into a bloodline that your paranoia destroyed. I've spent 3 years in this castle being mocked for being wolfless, and now you want to punish me for having what you all take for granted? We want to see what you are, Sorella said coldly. Show us your wolf, or admit the king's claim is a lie. Mara looked at Aldrich. He shook his head slightly, warning her not to give them what they wanted. But she was tired of playing their games, tired of being careful. She reached for her wolf, and it came instantly, eagerly. The shift was effortless this time, her body knowing exactly what to do. Bones realigned, muscles reformed, fur erupted across her skin. The transformation took seconds. When it was complete, she stood on 4 legs in the center of the grand hall, easily twice the size of a normal wolf. Her fur was silver gray, her eyes glowing with power that made the nearest nobles stumble backward. She could feel the weight of her presence pressing against everyone in the room, forcing them to acknowledge what she was. Silence. Absolute terrified silence. Then Lord Brennan spoke, his voice shaking. That's an alpha wolf. Pure bloodline. I haven't seen power like that since the Vaena-born line, Lady Cordelia finished, and for the first time there was something like respect in her voice. The girl is legitimate. Mara shifted back to human form, the change smooth and controlled. She stood naked for a moment before Aldrich wrapped his cloak around her shoulders, his face fierce with pride. Any other questions about my mate's qualifications? He asked quietly. No one answered. Sorella's face had gone white, then red. This changes nothing. The law is what I say it is. Aldrich's voice carried the weight of command that made everyone in the room straighten instinctively. I am your king, not because of bloodline or tradition, but because I'm strong enough to hold this throne against anyone who challenges me. If you doubt that, step forward now. No one moved. Mara Vaena is my chosen mate. She is Vaena-born by blood and alpha by nature. She will sit on this council, she will stand beside me, and anyone who objects can either challenge me directly or learn to live with disappointment. The council, Brennan started. The council serves at my pleasure, remember that. Aldrich's eyes swept the room. Now, was there anything else? Or can we stop this theatrical nonsense and get back to actually running the kingdom? Sorella looked like she wanted to argue, but even she recognized when she'd lost. The display of Mara's power had shifted everything. An alpha wolf couldn't be dismissed as a nobody. Vaena-born blood, however tainted by history, carried too much weight to ignore. This isn't over, the former queen said quietly. No, Aldrich agreed. It's not. But the next time you try something like this, make sure you have enough power to back it up, because mine just doubled. He took Mara's hand and led her out of the hall. Behind them, chaos erupted. Nobles arguing, council members shouting, the careful order of the court dissolving into panic and recalculation. They made it back to the tower before Mara's legs gave out. Aldrich caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. That was insane, she gasped. "That was the most insane thing I've ever done." "That was brilliant." He was grinning, actually grinning. "Did you see their faces?" Cordelia nearly fainted. "I thought I was going to faint. My wolf wanted to kill half of them." "But you didn't let it. You controlled it perfectly." He pulled her against him. "Do you understand what you just did? You walked into a room full of your enemies and made them bow without saying a word." She had. She'd felt it. The moment when fear became respect, when they stopped seeing a wolfless nobody and started seeing a threat they couldn't ignore. "Sorella's not going to give up," Mara said. "No, but she's lost her advantage. She was counting on you being weak, controllable. Now you're neither." Mara thought about the former queen's face, the cold fury in her eyes. "She's going to try something else, something worse." "Let her try." Aldrich's smile was sharp. "We'll be ready." A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered, looking exhausted but pleased. "The council is demanding another meeting tomorrow to discuss Lady Mara's position formally. And the guard who answered to Sorella? Half of them are asking to transfer to your personal service." "Because they're opportunistic cowards who follow power," Aldrich said. "Yes, but there are opportunistic cowards now." Marcus grinned. "Word is spreading through the castle. The king's mate is an alpha, a Vane-born alpha. The nobles are scrambling to reassess their alliances." "Good. Let them scramble." Aldrich stood, pulling Mara up with him. "Post extra guards on the tower tonight. Sorella might try something desperate." After Marcus left, Mara went to the window and looked out over the castle grounds. Lights flickered in windows across the complex, and she imagined the conversations happening in those rooms. Nobles plotting, servants gossiping, warriors reassessing who they served and why. "I don't know how to be what they expect," she said quietly. Aldrich came to stand behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "You don't have to be what they expect. You just have to be yourself, strong enough to survive, smart enough to outthink them, and stubborn enough never to quit." "That's a lot of pressure." "You've been handling pressure your entire life. This is just a different kind." His lips brushed her temple. "Besides, you're not alone anymore. We're in this together." She turned in his arms, looking up at his face. "Why do you believe in me so much?" "Because I see what you don't see yet. I see a woman who survived being hunted, who trained every day despite having no natural advantages, who stood before a council that wanted her dead and made them acknowledge her power." His hand cupped her jaw. "You don't need my belief, Mara. You just need to believe in yourself." She kissed him then, pouring all her fear and determination and gratitude into it. He responded with equal intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, his body pressed against hers. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone dark with something that had nothing to do with politics or power. "We should rest," he said, though his hands hadn't left her. "Tomorrow is going to be difficult." "When isn't it difficult?" His laugh was rough. "Fair point." They moved to the bedroom together, and for the first time since this started, Mara felt like she might actually survive it. Not just survive, thrive. The wolfless soldier who'd been mocked for 3 years was gone. In her place stood an alpha with bloodline power and a king's protection. Let the nobles plot. Let Sorella scheme. Mara had spent her entire life fighting for scraps of worth. Now she had real power and she knew exactly how to use it, the same way she'd used everything else. With determination, intelligence, and absolute refusal to back down. She fell asleep wrapped in Aldrich's arms, her wolf settled and content for the first time in its existence, and dreamed of silver fur and moonlight. The next morning brought a summons from the council, as expected, but it also brought something else, a formal petition signed by 30 noble families, requesting an audience with the king's mate to discuss alliances and agreements. "They're afraid," Marcus explained, setting the petition on Aldrich's desk. "Half the kingdom just realized they've been on the wrong side of history. They want to make amends before you decide to hold grudges." Mara studied the names on the petition. Some had been actively hostile. Others had simply ignored her. All of them were now scrambling to curry favor. "What do you want to do?" Aldrich asked. She thought about it. The old Mara would have told them all to go to hell, but the new Mara, the one with an alpha's instincts and a survivor's cunning, saw opportunity. Meet with them. All of them. Publicly. She looked at Aldrich. "Let them pledge loyalty where everyone can see. Make it formal, binding. They want to join the winning side? Fine. But they do it on our terms. Aldrich's smile was proud and fierce. You're learning fast. I had a good teacher. The audience was set for that afternoon in the grand hall. Mara spent the morning preparing with Isolde, who had appeared at her door with an offer to help that Mara accepted despite her reservations. You need to look like a queen, Isolde said, laying out options. Not a soldier, not a noble, a queen, someone they'll remember. I'm not a queen. Not yet. But you will be when Aldrich makes you his wife. Isolde's eyes met hers. This isn't just about you anymore, Mara. Every move you make affects the stability of the kingdom. The nobles need to see strength, confidence, and authority. Give them that. They settled on a dress of deep silver gray that matched her wolf's fur, simple but elegant, with subtle armor worked into the bodice. Mara's hair was pulled back in a warrior's braid, and she wore the knife Aldrich had given her openly on her hip. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back was powerful, dangerous, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness or convention. Perfect, Isolde said. You look like you could kill them all and then attend a state dinner. I could. I know, that's the point. Isolde handed her a small box. One more thing. A gift from Kalin. He asked me to give it to you. Mara opened the box and found a pendant inside. Simple silver engraved with the Vaneborn family crest. Her breath caught. He said to tell you he's sorry, Isolde said quietly, for everything, and that he understands why you can't forgive him. Mara closed the box without taking the pendant. Tell him I hope he finds the courage he should have had all along. Isolde nodded and left. Mara stood alone in the chambers, holding the box, feeling the weight of what she'd become. The girl who'd loved Kalin was gone completely now. In her place was someone harder, sharper, forged by fire and betrayal into something unbreakable. She set the box aside and went to meet her future. The grand hall was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was different. Nervous anticipation instead of hostile judgment. The nobles stood in organized rows, each family grouped together, all of them watching the doors for her arrival. Aldrich stood at the front beside his throne, watching her enter with eyes that burned with possessive pride. She walked to him, head high, and the hall fell silent. Noble families of the realm, Aldrich announced. My mate, Mara Vaneborn, heir to the Vaneborn Alpha line, has agreed to accept your pledges of loyalty. Those who wish to align with the crown, step forward now. One by one they came, heads of houses she'd never spoken to, nobles who'd mocked her, warriors who'd dismissed her. They knelt before her and Aldrich both, speaking the old words of fealty and service. Lord Varius knelt, his pride clearly wounded but his survival instinct intact. I pledge my house to your service. Lady Cordelia came next, moving slowly with age but with steel in her spine. The Cordelia line recognizes the Vaneborn line and pledges our loyalty. On and on it went, until 30 families had knelt, had spoken, had bound themselves to her service. Each pledge was another brick in the foundation of her power, another shield against those who would still see her destroyed. When it was done, when the last noble had risen and returned to their place, Mara spoke for the first time. You knelt today because you're afraid, because you saw what I am and realized I could destroy you if I chose. She let the words settle, watched them flinch. I accept your pledges, but understand this, I don't forget easily. You mocked me when I was weak. You called me worthless, laughed at me, made my life hell for 3 years. I remember every face, every insult, every moment you made me feel like I didn't belong. The hall was deathly quiet. But I also understand survival. I understand doing what you must to protect your families and your positions. So I'll honor these pledges if you honor them. Prove your loyalty through action, not just words, and we'll have no problems. She paused. Betray me, and you'll learn why the old king feared the Vaneborn line enough to try to wipe us out. Aldrich's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Pride and warning mixed together. She was walking a knife's edge between strength and tyranny. The audience is concluded, Aldrich said. Return to your houses. Remember what was pledged here today. They filed out in silence, subdued and thoughtful. When the last of them had gone, Mara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Too much? she asked. Perfect. Aldrich pulled her against him. You gave them respect while reminding them you're not to be trifled with. That's exactly the balance you need. Marcus approached, grinning widely. My lady, that was magnificent. I've never seen the noble houses so thoroughly cowed. They'll recover their nerve eventually, Mara said. Probably, but by then you'll be even stronger. He bowed slightly. If I may say, you're proving to be exactly what this kingdom needed. Someone who understands both strength and restraint. After he left, Mara and Aldrich stood alone in the grand hall. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting them in colors, red and gold and deep blue. A week ago I was nobody, Mara said softly. Now I have noble families pledging loyalty. How did this happen? You stopped letting other people define your worth. Aldrich turned her to face him. You're not nobody, Mara. You never were. You were just waiting for the right moment to show everyone what you'd been all along. She looked up at him, this king who'd risked everything to free her wolf, to give her back what had been stolen. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for being worth seeing. He kissed her gently, a promise and a claim wrapped together. Come on, we have a kingdom to run, and I suspect Sorella is already planning her next move. Let her plan, Mara said, feeling her wolf stir with anticipation. We'll be ready. They walked out of the grand hall together, the king and his alpha mate, leaving behind the old order and stepping into something new. Outside, the castle was changing, guards switching allegiances, servants whispering with respect instead of scorn, the entire power structure realigning around a woman who'd been invisible a week ago. Mara felt the shift like tectonic plates moving beneath her feet. The fight wasn't over. Sorella was still out there, still dangerous, still plotting. But the balance had shifted. The wolfless soldier had become an alpha queen, and she was just getting started. The attack came 3 nights later, in the darkest hours before dawn when the castle slept and the guards were at their weariest. Mara's wolf woke her before the intruders reached the tower. She sat up in bed, every sense screaming danger, and reached for Aldrich. He was already awake, his eyes black in the darkness, his wolf as alert as hers. How many? He whispered. She listened, sorting through the sounds of the sleeping castle. Footsteps, breathing, the scrape of metal on stone. 8, maybe 10, coming up the south stairwell. Professionals. He was already moving, pulling on clothes, strapping weapons to his body. They killed the guards on that level. I can smell the blood. Mara dressed just as quickly, her heart pounding but her hand steady. This was what Sorella had been planning. No more political maneuvering, no more council votes. Just assassination, clean and final. We could barricade the door, she said. Wait for Marcus to realize something's wrong. They'd burn us out. This tower is old. It would go up like kindling. Aldrich checked his blade, his expression cold and focused. We go through them. Fast and brutal. Don't give them time to coordinate. Together? Always together. He kissed her hard and quick. Stay behind me until we clear the first group. Then we split. You take the left flank, I'll take the right. And Mara? His eyes met hers. Don't hesitate. They're here to kill you. Show them why that was a mistake. They moved to the door, listening to the footsteps getting closer. Mara's wolf was howling for release, eager for the hunt. She held it back with effort. Shifting in the confined space of the stairwell would be tactical suicide. The door burst open. 3 men rushed through, blades already swinging. Aldrich met the first one with a speed that shouldn't have been possible, his sword taking the assassin's head off before the man even registered the king was there. Mara ducked under the second attacker's strike and drove her knife up under his ribs, feeling it slide between bone to find his heart. The third man hesitated, just for a second, seeing his companions drop so quickly. That second cost him his life. Aldrich's blade took him through the throat. Go! Aldrich shoved her toward the stairwell. More coming! They hit the stairs running. 5 more assassins were climbing up, dressed in black, faces covered. Professional killers, not castle guards playing at violence. Mara felt a cold clarity settle over her. This was survival, the purest kind, and she'd been training for it her entire life. She let her wolf surface partially, not a full shift, but enough to give her enhanced speed and strength. Her vision sharpened, her reflexes quickened. The first assassin she reached didn't even see her move. She was past his guard and opening his throat before he could bring his weapon to bear. Aldrich fought like a demon beside her, his sword a blur of lethal precision. He didn't waste movement, didn't show off. Every strike was designed to kill, nothing more. 2 assassins fell to his blade in as many seconds. The remaining 3 tried to retreat, realizing they'd badly underestimated their targets. Mara caught one from behind, her knife finding the gap between his shoulder blades. He went down screaming. Then it was over. 8 bodies on the stairs, blood running down the stone in dark rivers. Mara stood in the carnage, breathing hard, her wolf satisfied and still hungry for more. Aldrich grabbed her arm. "We need to move. This was a distraction." "What? 8 assassins sent to kill us, making enough noise to wake the castle? This was meant to draw attention here while something else happens." His face was grim. "Sorella's not stupid enough to think 8 men could take us both. She wanted us focused on defending ourselves while she made her real move." Understanding hit like a physical blow. "The council. She's going to force a vote while we're occupied. Worse, she's going to declare Kaelin king, claim I've been compromised by dark magic and need to be removed for the kingdom's safety." He was already running down the stairs, stepping over bodies. "If she gets enough council members to agree before we can stop her, she'll have legal grounds to arrest us both." They burst out of the tower into chaos. Half the castle was awake now, servants screaming, guards running in confused patterns. In the distance, Mara could see lights blazing in the council chambers. "Marcus!" Aldrich's voice carried like a whip crack. His captain appeared from the confusion, sword drawn, surrounded by loyal guards. "Get to the council chamber. Don't let anyone leave until we get there." "On it!" Marcus and his men took off running. Mara and Aldrich followed, but they'd barely made it across the courtyard when more assassins appeared. These weren't trying to be subtle. They came from 3 directions at once, at least 20 of them, all focused on keeping the king and his mate away from the council chamber. "They planned this well," Mara said, watching the assassins close in. "They planned for the king they thought I was, not the one I've become." Aldrich's eyes went completely black, his wolf surging to the surface. "Time to show them what a true alpha can do." He shifted mid-stride, his body exploding into his wolf form, massive and black as midnight, with eyes that burned like coals. The assassins stumbled back, fear breaking their professional composure. Mara grinned and let her own wolf free. The transformation was pure joy this time, her body reshaping itself with eager efficiency. When she landed on 4 paws, she was death incarnate. Silver gray fur, glowing eyes, power that radiated from her like heat from a forge. Together, they tore through the assassins like wolves through sheep. Mara's jaws closed on throats, her claws opened bellies, her weight crushed bones. Beside her, Aldrich was a dark storm of violence, unstoppable and merciless. The assassins tried to fight back, but steel was useless against wolves of their caliber. In less than a minute, it was over. Bodies littered the courtyard. The few assassins still alive were running, broken and terrified. Mara shifted back to human form, not bothering with the fact that she was naked and covered in blood. Aldrich shifted beside her, equally unconcerned. They stood in the carnage, breathing hard, and she saw respect in his eyes. "You're magnificent when you hunt," he said. "So are you." She grabbed his hand. "Come on, Sorella is still moving." They sprinted for the council chamber, not bothering to dress. Let the nobles see exactly what they were dealing with. Let them understand that titles and politics meant nothing in the face of primal power. The council chamber doors were barred from inside. Marcus and his men stood outside, weapons drawn, facing down another group of guards loyal to Sorella. "They declared the king unfit to rule 5 minutes ago," Marcus reported. "Claimed he's been corrupted by Vaneborn magic. They're about to crown Kaelin." "Break the door," Aldrich ordered. "My lord, that's—" "Break it, now." It took 4 guards with a battering ram, but the door splintered and gave way. Aldrich and Mara walked through the wreckage into a scene of barely controlled chaos. The council was assembled along with every major noble in the castle. Kaelin stood at the front, looking sick and miserable, with a crown in Sorella's hands hovering over his head. The former queen's face went white when she saw them enter. "This council is closed," Lord Brennan said, though his voice shook. "You have been declared unfit to—" "Unfit?" Aldrich's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. He walked forward, naked and bloody, and every noble in the room shrank back. "You declare me unfit while assassins loyal to Sorella murder my guards and try to kill me in my own castle. Interesting timing." "We know nothing about assassins," Sorella said, but her eyes betrayed her. Liar. Mara stepped forward, just as naked and just as bloody, and watched the noble's eyes widen. 28 assassins attacked us tonight, all of them professionals, all of them coordinated to happen at the exact moment you called this emergency session. You planned this, Sorella, badly. The girl is delusional. I'm an alpha wolf who can smell lies, and you reek of them. Mara moved closer to the former queen, letting her wolf show in her eyes. You've been planning this since the claiming ceremony, using Kaelin as your puppet, gathering loyal nobles, waiting for the right moment to strike. But you made one critical mistake. And what's that? You thought we were weak. Mara's smile was all teeth. You thought the king would fall to a handful of assassins. You thought I was still the scared girl begging for scraps. You were wrong on both counts. Sorella's hand trembled on the crown. The council has voted. The decision is made. Kaelin is king now, and you two are traitors to the realm. Show me the vote, Aldrich demanded. Brennan held up a document. 6 votes in favor of removing you, 4 against, 2 abstaining. The majority rules. 4 votes. Aldrich's eyes swept the council table. Brennan, Cordelia, Various, and who else voted against? Cordelia stood slowly. I did, Your Majesty, and Lord Theron, Lady Marissa, and Commander Ravik. We saw no legal grounds for this action. Because there are none, Aldrich said. This is a coup dressed up as legal procedure, and I won't allow it. You have no choice, Sorella said, her voice gaining confidence. The law is clear. A majority vote of the council can remove a king who has been corrupted by dark magic or declared unfit to rule. The crown passes to the heir, and Kaelin refuses it. Every head turned to Kaelin. The prince stood pale and shaking, but his voice was firm. He reached up and pushed the crown away from his head. I refuse the crown, he said again. My father is fit to rule. This vote is based on lies and manipulation. I won't be part of it. Sorella grabbed his arm. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Kaelin pulled free of her grip. You've been using me, Mother, using my guilt and weakness to fuel your revenge. But I'm done being your weapon. He looked at Mara, and there was genuine regret in his eyes. I'm sorry for all of it. You deserve better than what I gave you. Mara nodded slowly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. This is treason, Sorella hissed at her son. You're refusing your rightful place. There's nothing rightful about it, Kaelin said. Father, I pledge my loyalty to you and to your mate, if you'll still have it. Aldrich studied his son for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll have it. On the condition that you never let anyone control you like this again. I won't. I swear it. Sorella looked around wildly, seeing her careful plans crumbling. The vote still stands. The council has spoken. Actually, Lady Cordelia said, rising to her full height despite her age, I move to invalidate the vote based on evidence of coercion and conspiracy. Lord Brennan, you called this session in the middle of the night during an active attack on the king. That suggests coordination with hostile forces. I demand an investigation. Seconded, Lord Various said, standing as well, and I move to censure any council member found to have been working with the assassins. This is absurd. Sorella's composure was cracking. You can't just... We can, Brennan said quietly, and Mara saw the moment the Lord Chancellor made his choice. He'd been trying to play both sides, but now he was cutting his losses. Lady Cordelia is correct. This vote was called under suspicious circumstances. I move to invalidate it pending investigation. The other council members who'd voted to remove Aldrich suddenly found themselves very interested in the floor. They'd gambled on Sorella's plan working, and it had failed spectacularly. Aldrich walked to the front of the chamber, still naked and bloody, looking more like a king than he ever had in formal robes. The vote is invalidated. Sorella, you are hereby stripped of your title and position. You will be confined to your chambers pending investigation into tonight's attack. You can't do this, Sorella said, but her voice had lost its power. I am the queen. You are the queen. Now you're a traitor. Aldrich gestured to Marcus. Take her, gently. She's still Kaelin's mother, after all. Guards moved forward. Sorella tried to resist, but there was nowhere to run. As they led her away, she looked back at Mara with pure hatred. This isn't over, she spat. You're still Vonborn, still tainted by your family's treason. The kingdom will never accept you. Then the kingdom will learn, Mara said calmly. One way or another. When Sorella was gone, the chamber fell silent. Aldrich looked at the assembled nobles and council members, all of them avoiding his eyes. Anyone else want to question my fitness to rule? He asked quietly. Now's your chance. No one spoke. Good. Then here's how this is going to work. Mara Venaborn is my mate. She will be crowned queen at the next full moon. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now and never return. Those who stay will pledge loyalty to both of us, not just me. Understood? Slowly, one by one, the nobles nodded. And one more thing, Aldrich continued. The law declaring the Venaborn line traitors is hereby revoked. Their land and titles are restored to the sole surviving heir, my mate, your future queen. The purge was unjust, and I won't let that injustice stand any longer. Lady Cordelia smiled, and it transformed her ancient face. Finally, I've been waiting 20 years for someone to have the spine to say that. The formal pledges of loyalty took another hour. Each noble and council member came forward, knelt before both Aldrich and Mara, and swore their service. Some were sincere. Many were just scared. All of them were bound now, their words recorded and witnessed. When it was finally done, when the last noble had spoken their oath, Aldrich took Mara's hand and led her from the chamber. Someone had brought them cloaks. They were still naked and covered in blood, after all, and they wrapped themselves before walking through the castle. Servants and guards they passed dropped to their knees. Word had spread. The king and his mate had fought off assassins, faced down a coup, and emerged victorious. The wolfless soldier was now the Alpha Queen, and everyone who'd mocked her was scrambling to make amends. Back in the tower, finally alone, Mara sank into a chair and let the exhaustion hit her. Her hands were shaking, her body aching. She'd killed people tonight, multiple people. Their blood was still on her skin. Aldrich knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. Talk to me. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to feel. Her voice came out rough. I killed 8 people tonight. Maybe more. I don't even know the exact count. They came to kill you. You defended yourself. I know, but it doesn't make it easier. She looked at him. Does it get easier? No. It just gets more necessary. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You did what you had to do to survive, to protect what we're building here. That's not something to feel guilty about. But I don't feel guilty. That's what scares me. She pulled her hands free and stood, pacing to the window. I enjoyed it, Aldrich. The hunt, the kill. My wolf loved every second of it. What does that make me? Alive? Powerful. Exactly what you were always meant to be. He came to stand behind her, his hands on her shoulders. You're not a monster for embracing your nature. You're finally complete. She turned to face him. Everything's changed. A week ago I was nobody. Now I'm about to be queen. How is that real? It's real because you made it real. Because you refused to stay broken, refused to accept what they tried to make you. He cupped her face in his hands. You earned this, Mara. Every bit of it. Not because I claimed you, but because you claimed yourself. Tears burned in her eyes, and she let them fall. All the fear, the pain, the years of struggling to prove she had worth, it all came pouring out. Aldrich held her through it, solid and warm and utterly certain. When the tears finally stopped, she felt lighter, clean in a way that had nothing to do with washing off blood. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. We root out Sorella's remaining allies, strengthen the council, prepare for your coronation. He smiled. And we figure out how to rule a kingdom that's never had an alpha pair on the throne before. Think we can do it? I know we can. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's get cleaned up. Dawn's coming, and we have work to do. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Sorella was tried and found guilty of conspiracy to commit regicide. She was exiled to a remote estate in the Northern Territories, stripped of all titles and power. Kaelin took over many of her former duties, proving surprisingly capable when he wasn't being manipulated. The council restructured itself. Several members who'd supported the coup were replaced with nobles who'd proven their loyalty. Lady Cordelia became the new Lord Chancellor, her age and experience lending stability to the transition. Mara spent hours every day learning governance, law, diplomacy, all the things she'd never been taught because no one thought she'd need them. It was exhausting and frustrating, and she loved every minute of it. This was power of a different kind, and she was determined to master it. The nobles who'd pledged loyalty proved themselves in various ways. Some brought trade agreements, others military support. Lord Various surprised everyone by becoming one of Mara's strongest advocates, using his influence in the northern territories to quash remaining resistance to her rule. "I backed the wrong wolf," he told her one afternoon during a council meeting. "I won't make that mistake again." Isolde became an unexpected ally as well. She and Kaelin had quietly dissolved their engagement by mutual agreement, and she'd gone back to managing her family's estates. But she stayed in the capital, attending court regularly, offering advice when Mara needed it. "You're not what I expected," Isolde said one evening over wine. "What did you expect? Someone vengeful, someone who'd use her new power to destroy everyone who'd wronged her." Isolde studied her glass. "But you're not interested in revenge. You're interested in building something better." "Revenge is a waste of time," Mara said. "I'd rather focus on the future." The full moon came, bringing with it the coronation ceremony. The grand hall was packed with nobles from every corner of the kingdom, all of them dressed in their finest, all of them watching to see if the Alpha Queen would truly take her place. Mara wore silver and gray, colors of her wolf, with the vein-born crest embroidered in black across her chest. Her hair was loose, falling in dark waves down her back. She wore no jewelry except for a simple silver circlet, a crown, but not the elaborate thing queens usually wore. This was a warrior's crown, and she wore it like armor. Aldrich stood beside her in black and silver, his own crown gleaming in the candlelight. They'd made modifications to the ceremony, turning it from a singular coronation into a joining, 2 alphas, 2 rulers, equal in power and authority. The high priest spoke the words, ancient and formal. Mara barely heard them. She was too focused on the faces in the crowd, seeing respect where there'd once been contempt, seeing fear where there'd once been mockery. "Do you, Mara Vainborn, accept the crown and all its responsibilities?" the priest asked. "I do." "Do you swear to rule with wisdom, strength, and justice?" "I swear it." "Do you pledge yourself to the kingdom and its people to defend them with your life if necessary?" "I pledge it." Her voice carried through the hall. "I am Vainaborn by blood, Alpha by nature, and Queen by choice. Anyone who doubts my commitment to this kingdom can challenge me directly. Otherwise, get used to seeing me on this throne." A ripple of shocked laughter went through the crowd. It wasn't the traditional response, but nothing about Mara had ever been traditional. Aldrich grinned and took her hand. "I pledge myself to you, my mate and my equal. Where you lead, I'll follow. Where you need support, I'll provide it. Where you need someone to watch your back, I'll be there." "And I pledge myself to you," Mara said, turning to face him. "Where you need strength, I'll give it. Where you need honesty, I'll provide it. Where you need someone to tell you when you're being an idiot, I'll definitely be there." More laughter, warmer this time. The priest looked slightly scandalized but continued. "Then by the authority vested in me and witnessed by this assembly, I declare you king and queen, joint rulers of this realm. May your reign be long and prosperous." The hall erupted in cheers. It wasn't the uncertain, polite applause Mara had expected. It was genuine celebration, loud and raucous. The nobles had made their choice, and they were committing to it. Aldrich pulled her close and kissed her, and the cheers got louder. When they broke apart, he was smiling in a way she'd never seen before, completely open, completely happy. "Ready to rule a kingdom, Queen Mara?" "Ready to try, King Aldrich." They walked through the hall together, hand in hand, while nobles bowed and servants threw flower petals. Outside the castle, bells were ringing, announcing the coronation to the entire city. Mara could hear people cheering in the streets, celebrating the new queen they'd heard so much about. That night, after the formal celebrations, after the endless stream of well-wishers and sycophants, Mara stood alone on the tower balcony and looked out over the kingdom. Her kingdom now, hers and Aldrich's. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago, desperate, mocked, clinging to false hope. That girl was gone completely. In her place stood a queen with alpha blood, a mate who'd risked everything for her, and a kingdom that had finally learned to see her worth. Thinking deep thoughts? Aldrich joined her on the balcony, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Thinking about how far I've come, how different everything is. Any regrets?" She thought about it honestly. No, not even about Kaylin. If he'd chosen me that night, I never would have become this. I would have stayed small, grateful just to be tolerated. This way, she gestured to the city below. This way I get to be everything I was meant to be. You would have found your way eventually. You're too stubborn to stay broken. Maybe, but this was faster. She turned in his arms. Thank you. For seeing what I couldn't see, for believing when I'd given up. Thank you for being brave enough to accept what I offered. It would have been easier to refuse, to stay safe in your suffering. You chose the harder path. They stood in silence, watching the city celebrate. Somewhere down there, people who'd never met her were drinking to her health, telling stories about the wolfless soldier who became an alpha queen. The story would grow and change over time, becoming legend, becoming myth. But Mara would always remember the truth, that she'd survived through determination, intelligence, and absolute refusal to accept what others tried to make her. That she'd faced down a kingdom's contempt and emerged victorious, not because of magic or destiny, but because she'd simply refused to quit. What do you think happens next? She asked. Next, we actually have to govern, deal with trade disputes, manage the territories, handle all the boring administrative work that comes with ruling. Aldrich grinned. Think you can handle bureaucracy after assassins and coups? I survived 3 years of mockery. I can survive paperwork. That's my queen. He kissed her temple. Come to bed. Tomorrow starts the real work. They went inside together, leaving the celebration behind. In the bedroom, away from the crown and the politics and the weight of expectation, they were just themselves, two wolves who'd found each other against impossible odds, two survivors who'd chosen to build something new instead of staying broken. Mara fell asleep wrapped in Aldrich's arms, her wolf content and settled, her heart finally at peace. She'd started this journey as nobody. She was ending it as a queen. But more importantly, she was ending it as herself, strong, fierce, and finally free. The next morning brought the first real challenge of her reign. A delegation from the Southern Territories arrived, demanding audience with the new queen. They had grievances about land rights, tax disputes, a dozen small problems that had been ignored for years. Mara met them in the council chamber, wearing her crown and her most intimidating expression. Aldrich sat beside her, supportive, but letting her take the lead. The delegation's leader, a grizzled man named Torvin, looked skeptical when he saw her. You're the new queen? The one they say was wolfless? Was, Mara confirmed. Now I'm the alpha who rules this kingdom alongside the king. Do you have a problem with that? Torvin studied her, then slowly smiled. No problem. Just wanted to make sure the stories were true. You really fought off 20 assassins naked and covered in blood? 28, actually, and yes, his laugh was genuine. Well then, I think we can do business. The South has been ignored too long. We need infrastructure, protection from raiders, fair taxation. Can you deliver that? I can try, but I'll need your cooperation, not your resistance. They spent the next 3 hours negotiating, arguing, hammering out agreements that would benefit both the Crown and the Southern Territories. It was exhausting, detailed work, but Mara found she had a talent for it. She understood what it was like to be overlooked, to fight for scraps. She could relate to these people in a way no other ruler had. By the end, Torvin was pledging the South's loyalty and inviting her to visit their capital. You're not what I expected from royalty, he said as he prepared to leave. Good. I'm not trying to be what anyone expects. After the delegation left, Aldrich pulled her close. You were incredible. You handled them perfectly. It was easier than I thought it would be. They just wanted to be heard, to matter. Exactly what you wanted all those years. He smiled. You're going to be a great queen, Mara. She looked around this council chamber, at the throne that was now hers, at the kingdom spread out beyond the windows. We're going to be great rulers. Together. Together, he agreed. And as they walked out of the chamber to face whatever came next, Mara felt something she'd never felt before. Complete certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Not because someone had chosen her, but because she'd chosen herself. The wolfless soldier had become an alpha queen. The unwanted warrior had found her throne. And the kingdom would never be the same.